The first tropical system of the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season is forming in the Bay of Campeche in the southern Gulf of Mexico. In this video, we'll be looking at what this is going to do and what comes after that. And we'll also take a quick look at the extreme heat across the US. But first, if you're new here, please be sure to hit the subscribe button for more weather updates. So this is potential tropical cyclone 1. This is 40 miles an hour right now, the NHC. This is actually the first advisory on this system, and the winds are at 40 miles an hour. And here are the key messages. This is going to be a lot of rain, some wind, but this is sort of a disorganized system right now. But it's expected to turn into a tropical storm for real in like about 36 hours by Wednesday. And this is actually going to generate a lot of rain. This is the expected rainfall for the next 3 days, I guess, is 8 to 12 inches across South Texas, because the storm is actually, a lot of the heaviest rain is to the north of the system. And so there's actually going to be 8 to 12 inches of rain, possibly in South Texas around Corpus Christi, and then San Antonio could get 6 to 8 inches of rain. That's a lot of rain. And then, and this is not extremely slow moving, but somewhat. And so it will dump a lot of rain especially in southern Texas. And then there is a moderate risk of flooding for Wednesday and Thursday across like Corpus Christi, San Antonio, even Houston, in kind of a moderate risk of flooding. And they're also expecting up to 4 feet of storm surge, 2 to 4 feet in Galveston Bay over here in Texas, and then maybe 1 to 3 feet along the entire coast of Texas, even into Louisiana. So this is a pretty sprawled out system. And that's the thing, because if you look, the winds, the 40 mile an hour winds are like off to the side, like right there. And so this is kind of going towards, it's going to make landfall, I guess, in northern, or I guess the northeastern kind of coast of Mexico. But there's actually the tropical storm watches going from Mexico all the way into coastal Texas, as those strong winds are going to be on the north side of the system. And so that's that. And this is kind of just what the storm looks like. It's pretty disorganized right now, but they're expecting that it will intensify over time, because this is and there's actually a couple more systems out there too, but this is just Invest 91, or now it's called potential tropical cyclone 1. And really it looks like it's going towards this part of the coast of Mexico. But of course, that they did say in the key messages, don't focus on the track, because the impacts extend out pretty far from the center. This is a big system, and they are expecting this will intensify to a tropical storm, at least this is saying within the next about 60 or so hours. It could reach anywhere from maybe 45 miles an hour all the way up to 70 miles an hour. Maybe a slight chance that it becomes a hurricane if it's able to rapidly intensify, which that could be possible, but it doesn't really look like it, because it's a sprawled out system. But we'll see. And then there's actually a couple other systems. So there's this one, which is going towards, actually this is going towards the southeastern US, like Florida, the east coast of Florida, maybe Georgia potentially. But this one, the GFS did show before that it looked like a compact system kind of moving towards there, but it actually is toned down on that. But this is kind of the 7-day outlook. You have one, and then you have this. But in the eastern Pacific, there's actually a storm. I think there's actually another disturbance that's kind of along the coast of Central America, and this one actually is going to turn, and this one, the GFS is trying to show that after we have potential tropical cyclone 1, or that's going to be Tropical Storm Alberto, it's the first named storm of the season. Then after that, there's this other storm that would be Beryl if it gets named. This one, the GFS is actually saying that this could become a hurricane. So that would be Hurricane Beryl if that does happen. And then that other one, like that other storm, the other disturbance could be Chris if everything kind of lines up. But we'll see what happens with this one. If that doesn't develop, this second storm behind potential tropical cyclone 1, if that one actually forms, because remember, it's this whole Central American gyre kind of thing that could generate several systems. Basically, that could actually create another storm that could be Beryl or Chris, depending on if anything else forms. But this one, the GFS is trying to show becomes a hurricane and hits the same area that Alberto is going to hit. And then this one, the models right now are just showing maybe a tropical storm, but we'll see. This is the HAFS-B model showing Alberto, or potential tropical cyclone 1, and it's showing this getting down to like 985 millibars. That this would be an actual hurricane. That's what that's showing. I think that's an extreme, because the HAFS-B model tends to go extreme with systems, but I guess it's technically possible. Like, this is totally, blowing up into this hurricane according to that model, because it's showing that at least the system is kind of big, so the pressure is low, but the winds aren't quite that strong. They're actually about 65 miles an hour, so that's possible. I think probably 50 miles an hour or something would make more sense, but this is showing 45 miles an hour as the maximum intensity for this in 60 hours from the NHC. So we'll see what happens with that. This is GFS kind of showing the GFS is like showing it as a weak system, but you have all this rain actually on the north side of the system, just plowing into Texas. It's like just Texas getting soaked potentially with all that rain. Just really heavy rain on the north side of the system, and then what happens? Look at this. There's all this rain and thunderstorms around Central America, and then that could actually. This is the GFS showing it generates another system, and this is by between June 23rd and June 26th. This really blows up and it actually stalls into a strong hurricane, goes in the same place that potential tropical cyclone 1 or Alberto just went. And this is a pretty intense hurricane too. And then that other system, that other storm, that disturbance, really not showing much of anything for that. Now, I don't know if the Euro kind of shows a little more to that disturbance, but it's still like more of a tropical wave. And so there's that, but this storm, like, the Euro isn't really excited about this Alberto system, but it's there, so it, and it's sprawled out, so it's not going to be a really organized system, but then even the Euro is showing something forming afterwards, in that June 20th to 26th time frame, and then the Euro is actually showing this getting pretty strong and going towards Louisiana. So there's going to be something after Alberto possibly in the same place. And then the GFS in terms of the wind, not really strong, except and the thing is with the circulation, it looks pretty like disorganized, kind of elongated, all that stuff. So you have the main probably circulation, because there's shear, the main circulations to the north of where you have the circulation that's technically the technical center of the storm, but you have another kind of what looks like another part of the circulation to the north with the stronger winds. So there could be some, disorganization with this system, but then the next one looks a lot more intense. Possibly, a hurricane, category 2 hurricane potentially, because this is more compact looking, possibly category 2 hurricane hitting the same place. Yeah, that's not good. And then this is the shear. It actually shows, a somewhat favorable shear environment, at least for part of the storm, but there is still shearing on the system, which is going to keep it from really doing anything. And then there's an opportunity for something to kind of form on the, near the Bahamas, the east coast of Florida or something, maybe a short window for that. But then you have this other storm that it does look like a more favorable shear pattern, especially on the western side of the Gulf of Mexico. This could do something, between June 22nd and June 26th. Something's going to form. And the Climate Prediction Center also shows that too. So this is the GFS kind of ensemble tracks. It's showing this first system pretty weak, but then possibly another system, in the same general place afterwards. And it does show maybe slight potential in this one, but not really much of anything. And then the tropics actually could tone down. So it's like, we're in that sort of favorable time frame, but then it might actually become unfavorable again. And then, you see the shear is like the Eastern Gulf. A lot of places are really sheared. You do have lower shear in the Caribbean and the tropical Atlantic, but there's a lot of Saharan dust, so that's going to really destroy anything that, so you're not going to have any storms developing there. But the western side of the Gulf is sort of favorable, and then it really stays favorable for the next couple weeks actually. And then it might actually, the shear at least part of things actually gets more below average and probably more favorable for systems. But that's that with the tropical systems. And then here's the Saharan dust. It's like there's all that dust in the eastern part of the tropical Atlantic. You have just like crazy amounts of Saharan dust. And then even in the Caribbean it's pretty bad. In the Gulf it's thinner, and it's really just spinning around the system, so it might not cause too much of a problem for that storm, and it could actually just it just spins around the system, so not really a bad thing. And then it is actually highly favorable in the Central America region for tropical storms, but then further north in the Gulf it says it's unfavorable, even highly unfavorable. And then over here it's favorable, but there's nothing there. So, we'll see. But there is going to be some tropical storm Alberto, I guess, in the next couple days. But then another storm behind that that's going to be possibly even more intense. And this is the kind of 40-day forecast. It's showing like favorable conditions right now. June 17th, June 22nd, still favorable. Even favorable over June 27th and even into July. So it could actually be slightly favorable. Then you have a little bit of things being unfavorable from like July 7th and July 12th, but then you have it, getting favorable again by mid to late July apparently. So that's what that 40-day forecast is showing. And then the CFS is showing for week 1, June 17th to June 24th is favorable, and then the next week, even going to July 1st, is favorable, but then it gets really unfavorable across the Pacific and the Atlantic through most of July, apparently. So that'll be interesting to see what that does. you know, and they are thinking that that system is going to form, but then it really shifts to, slight potential in the East Pacific, but really the Eastern Pacific isn't doing anything for now. This is the Euro just showing basically probably like 4 to 6 inches of rain in Texas from Alberto. That's the Euro. The GFS is showing a lot more. For this tropical system, you have an area of 8 to 12 inches. So even possibly a little bit over 12 inches in some parts of southern Texas from that storm. So that'll be interesting to see. That's kind of more in line with the Weather Prediction Center and the NHC were showing. Then we also have the extreme heat. So there's the tropics, and then there's also the extreme heat across the U.S. You have today a major heat risk across a big section of the Midwest, even some extreme heat risk over Illinois and Missouri. And then tomorrow it gets worse. You have extreme heat risk from Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, even West Virginia. You have this huge extreme heat risk. And then it gets even worse on Wednesday, a more solid extreme heat risk, especially over Michigan, where, it's not hot most of the time. And now they're having temperatures possibly 100 degrees. Yeah, that's rare and extreme. You could have record-breaking heat over there over the next few days. And then it gets worse. It spreads into the Northeast. And then that's Thursday, and then Friday it actually comes back down to the kind of Ohio, Michigan, Indiana kind of region, even Illinois, and then it really starts pushing south. It's like it's really starting to move south again, where all that extreme heat is just gonna cook for a long time. Even extreme heat risk in the New York City area, and then by Sunday, you could have a bunch of major heat risk all the way down into the south, and then all the way up into Ohio, even some areas of extreme heat risk along the kind of the mid-Atlantic area. Just really the whole central and eastern U.S. really going to be cooked over the next few days, and then that'll probably continue. But this is kind of showing that you have this huge ridge just exploding over the Northeast. Well, you have a lot of troughing and cooler temperatures in the western U.S., even, there was some snow or something in the Pacific Northwest. It's like, in June, it's like, yeah, that's pretty interesting. And then you have this huge ridge explodes, and then that trough actually starts weakening over the west, but it spreads out a little bit. And then, you have that ridge really just exploding. This is Thursday, and then it really starts kind of spreading out, and that trough kind of disappears. You still have troughing there, but really this huge ridge explodes over the, really the eastern half of the U.S., but still, then it looks like ridging really expands, and then the west starts to get ridging again with hot temperatures, and the Northeast getting ridging, and then maybe troughing in between that by June 22nd. This is going to be like really expanding possibly over the west, and then you have possibly more troughing in the west, and then more ridging, and then troughing. So the weather pattern could change quite a bit over the next 10 days. Just more heat, and then it looks like it repeats, where you have a huge ridge over the Northeast by June 26th, and then you have possibly of course a tropical system, and then you have huge ridging over the Northeast, more troughing over the west, and then ridging behind that. It's like, probably a complicated looking weather pattern after that. So, we'll see what happens with that. And the heat index is going to be pretty bad. You have, that extreme heat, because you have the heat index is going to be pretty high. Like, they're saying the heat index in the 90s, which maybe isn't that bad, but then temperatures only cool down to the mid-70s at night, and then you do have the heat index being near 100 degrees in Maine, which shouldn't be happening, and in Ohio, Michigan, but it's cooler over the western U.S. and the Pacific Northwest. It's a lot cooler, some of that heat really shifts to the northeast, and you could see that there on those heat indices. And then into Friday, it really kind of keeps pushing towards 100 degrees, and then even kind of in the northeast on the coast, like New Jersey, starts getting towards 100 degrees there. But then you have some of that heat. Then it starts building in the western U.S. again, having heat indexes, 112, 115 degrees, which is, that's going to be cooler than the actual air temperature, which is, probably going to be by next week, probably going to be having temperatures 115, close to 120 possibly, if the heat index is 112. And then that heat really blows up across the south next week. According to the Euro, yeah, triple digits in terms of the heat index. Really getting more and more intense, even possibly more extreme heat pushing towards the Midwest again, with the heat index approaching 100 degrees. That's going to be by next Wednesday. So definitely, a lot of hot temperatures, but this is the, day one maximum temperature today, basically happening right now, or by 8 p.m. Eastern time, which is like close to right now. You have those high temperatures for the day, pretty cool across the West, 50s, 60s, even 70s. But then over here you have those 90s, even approaching 100 in some places, and then the low temperatures only get down into the mid 70s, which is probably, that's pretty bad to have it, get up to like, 100 degrees, and then the low temperatures like, in the upper 70s. That's that limited overnight cooling that they mention in the extreme heat risk. And then, so these temperatures are getting close to those record high temperatures, but so this is extreme heat. Then it really starts pushing towards 100 in, of course, the Southwest, but this is normal for the southwestern U.S., but not for Maine, where the average, I think the average high temperature in Maine in the summer is like, 75 degrees. That's the average high temperature. But then you have that heat really building across the West again, and the Midwest and the Northeast. So, really the entire U.S. is going to be cooked pretty soon. So this keeps, building up thin. And this is going into next Sunday. You have temperatures 110 to 115 in Arizona, and then you have temperatures near 100 degrees across the south. With humidity, that's going to bring some extreme heat. And, just above average temperatures for the next 6 to 10 days, 8 to 14 days, weeks 3 to 4. Yeah. And then they were even thinking that, you could have rapid onset of drought conditions if it's going to be that hot and dry for, for a long time, because the actual, precipitation is not going to be that much for the next 5 days or so. Like, you actually do have some rain. Before they weren't really showing much of anything, but still those hot temperatures could really dry things out. And then it's going to be dry, of course, in the Southwest, which is, somewhat normal for summer, but, there's that. And then you have more rain, across the Midwest. Also, the risk of heavy precipitation from June 25th to June 29th. This would be due to that tropical system, possibly a hurricane hitting either, that northeastern coast of Mexico or the Texas coast, possibly Louisiana coast, somewhere along here, along that Gulf of Mexico coast, is going to also see a tropical system possibly after Alberto. Thanks for watching this video. Please be sure to hit the like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more weather discussions. Extreme weather zone out.